Hey, Bills Mafia. We know there's only one topic every day. All Bills, all the time. And now Matt Bovee and Sal Capaccio are going really deep, talking Bills all year long, because it's always game day in Buffalo.
You know, when the Bills make a move sometimes, Matt and I say to each other, we text each other, hey, like, does this warrant a podcast? And emergency pod. I actually tweeted out, I don't think this is an emergency pod, but it's certainly a needle mover enough to say, hey, we haven't talked to everybody in a few days, so we might as well get our thoughts out pretty quickly. Bills are going to sign Elijah Moore. But yeah, I think it's worthy enough here, Matt.
We texted each other at the exact same minute. I was looking at my phone, 6:32. You say to me, do you think we should do something tomorrow? Me at the exact same time. You around tonight? Want to do something quick? I don't care either way. My Thursday is just shot. Wow. Same exact time on the same wavelength.
I was typing while I got your text. You were typing while I got you got my text, right?
I finished the news at 6 o'clock. I literally walked off set at 6:30, 6:32. 2 minutes later, I text you. You're texting me. Here we are about an hour later.
So we're doing it now. We're talking about the Bills agreeing to terms with Elijah Moore. We can confirm that's going to happen.
Yep.
And it's going to be a one-year deal. And Adam Schefter says it's worth up to $5 million, as with the Tre'Davious White signing, other signings. We don't know the details, right? Up to. I will say this. The fact that the Browns put the unrestricted free agent tender on him, which was kind of a very unique kind of situation, but without getting the weeds on that, that did guarantee him $3.4 million no matter what, going back to the Browns. So the question is, did the Bills also guarantee him at least that? Or did he say, no, I'm going to play for less, but I can make more and I'm playing with Josh Allen? That's going to be interesting when it comes out.
I bet the Bills paid him at least 3.4. I don't think it's maybe 5, but I think he's a better player than, the 3.4. If that's what it would have been, I would have been like, yeah, that sounds like it makes sense. If that's what it ends up being, I'd say, yeah, it seems like it makes sense. Elijah Moore's a good player. Elijah Moore, I really, really like the move. I know we're going to talk more in specifics about it, but yeah, I don't think that even if it's up to $5 million, I don't think that that's crazy on a one-year flyer for a player who's still 25 years old.
In the way it will work for the salary cap, so everybody knows, let's just say it's a cap number of 3.5. Let's say they guaranteed him 3.5. He has incentives, but up to 5. It actually wouldn't count 3.5 in the cap right now. It would only count 2.5 in the cap right now, because only the top 51 salary caps count. And Matt, right now, that cutoff's about $1 million. So basically you would knock someone who makes $1 million off that top 51, and then the difference would be 2.5. So whatever his money is on the cap, it's actually going to be $1 million less right now here in the offseason, which makes it a lot more doable for the Buffalo Bills, as they're pretty tight against the cap.
Yeah, they're tight against the cap, but I think that this goes back to all of the things that they did right when the kind of meat and potatoes part of the offseason started in middle March. They're restructuring people. They're bringing people back. We're talking about, how much cap space do they actually have? I feel like they always had a little bit more than we were probably giving them credit for kind of break glass in case of emergency, things like this. Maybe they didn't think that they needed Elijah Moore. Maybe they thought they were going to get a receiver in the draft a little bit earlier than they were able to. And then once they didn't, they circled back to Elijah Moore and said, hey, we like this player. We liked the upside there. So that's kind of my read on it, of hey, I bet they liked the player. I bet they had interest in the player. But once they knew that they couldn't get something done in the draft, they were like, all right, let's shift back to the guy who's a year or two older than some of the players getting drafted last week.
All right, you said a minute ago you like the move. Why do you like it?
I feel like he's got so much untapped potential given the circumstances he has been in. First off, I just like that he's a versatile player. This is not somebody who's going to line up on the line of scrimmage a ton, but I think there's this misconception that he's just a slot guy, and that's not true. He is a Z receiver. He can line up outside. He's not going to physically body anybody or anything like that. He's not big, but he's got speed. The thing on him is people say, hey, he can separate. And what have we said about the Bills? That they don't have many true separators on their roster. And I just always like taking gambles on guys who've got upside who are still young. He's still 25 years old, and he's played with the Jets and the Browns, right? Last year he was playing in a Ken Dorsey offense. Are we at all shocked that it did? I mean, he had 61 catches. It's not like that's nothing. That is a very reliable target for the Bills. I don't have it in front of me. Would 61 catches have been the second most on the Bills last year?
By a lot.
So there you go. Like, I think that this is a player who can come in and make an impact. I think the real kind of competition now is kind of like him and Curtis Samuel as like
Right.
the 4 or 5 competition. But I think he's got the upside to kind of climb up that ladder a little bit.
All right, so I'm looking at it right now. Yeah. So Khalil Shakir had 76 to lead the team. He had 61. Dalton Kincaid was next at 44. James Cook at 32. Mac Hollins was the next receiver at 31, right? So let's take a look at it right now. I'll give you his numbers. There you go. Take a look on your screen. Last year, 61 catches. And by the way, it wasn't an outlier. He had the exact same numbers pretty much the year before that.
Yeah, exactly. And once again, it's not like we're talking about a guy who's playing with elite quarterbacks, right? Last year, Deshaun Watson a little bit. I don't even know who came in for him after he got injured. They had like
Dorian Thompson-Robinson.
Yeah, Dorian Thompson-Robinson and stuff coming in. Joe Flacco a couple of years ago. So like, yeah, it's just this mismatch of quarterbacks. He was with the Jets before they had Aaron Rodgers. So at that point, it's Zach Wilson. It's a couple other guys. Like I said, 25 years old. 25 years old is still a really young player. And there were players we talked about the Bills drafting who were turning 25 before the season started. And it's not like he's almost 26. He turns 25 a month ago. So he will be 25 for the entire season.
To your point about some of the numbers here and what we just talked about, Mac Hollins had 31 catches last year. You know how many yards he had, Mac Hollins, last year in the regular season?
Let's say 450 is my guess.
378.
Wow. I'm surprised by that.
Look at, just for a second, look on your screen, Matt. By the way, we're on video here at Sal Sports on the YouTube side if you can. Matt, look on your screen. I just told you Mac Hollins had 378 last year. Look at the numbers for Elijah Moore all 4 years.
Yeah.
Every one of them beats it by quite a bit. Like every year he's been in the league, he's had at least 446 yards receiving. The number 2 guy in the Bills last year had less than that last year.
Let's just take in, somebody posted this on X, and I think it's a good point. Let's look at the 2 players that they lost in the receiver room, Mac Hollins and Amari Cooper, and the 2 players that they have coming in with Elijah Moore and with Josh Palmer. Now, Amari Cooper.
Let's do that here. Look here. I got it right here. Take a look. I got it right here. So up on top of the screen if everybody's watching there.
Okay. So I just think that they are getting more upside out of those 2 guys, out of Josh Palmer and Elijah Moore. I think we would have said there's more upside a year ago with the other 2 guys, but
I know. I'm trying to find the right way on the video side.
You're fine.
Don't mind me, folks. We don't have a producer with us right now. Mike Robbie, our producer, has a well-deserved week off, so I'm trying my best to do this here. Go ahead.
Long-winded way of saying, I think Amari Cooper is, of course, the biggest name of the bunch, undoubtedly. But after we saw Amari Cooper with the Bills last season, I think it's probably pretty clear he's lost a step or 2. Josh Palmer and Elijah Moore are still young players who I do not think are in the second half of their careers. And I think that they have far more upside than what Mac Hollins and Amari Cooper had with this team. So it's not an absolutely like even wash because there's things that Mac Hollins was better at than Josh Palmer and Elijah Moore are going to be better at. But I also think there's a lot more explosion with both of those players.
Yeah. So do I have them in the right order? This is a loose depth chart, by the way. That's why I asked that. I have Khalil Shakir, Keon Coleman 2, Joshua Palmer at 3, Curtis Samuel at 4, Elijah Moore at 5, and then Tyrell Shavers. I think that there's a gap, right? To me, these are the top 5, and then the rest of it would have to win a job. Now, I do think Laviska Shenault could win a job as a kick returner. You keep 6 receivers and you just trim some other spot. That's fine. I'm just talking about wide receivers who line up on a regular basis for the Buffalo Bills as a wide receiver. I have Shakir, Coleman, Palmer 3, Samuel 4, Moore 5. I think the only thing to dispute here or to have a debate about might be who 4 and 5 are, right?
Yeah, I think so. I think that makes sense. I would probably Elijah Moore and Curtis Samuel is such a coin toss for me because I do think that Curtis Samuel, I'm really interested to know how banged up he was last year. Because the Curtis Samuel we saw in the playoffs was different than the Curtis Samuel we saw for most of the season. He really did turn it on kind of right at the end. So is it going to be more of that? I mean, remember last year when they signed Curtis Samuel, you looked at his numbers with Joe Brady in Carolina, and a lot of us thought like he might lead the team in receptions. They're going to use him all over the field. And then he really just didn't do much. So I don't know what to expect from Curtis Samuel. I think recency bias might tell me that Elijah Moore would be a little bit ahead. But I also think that the familiarity with the offense probably gives the leg up to, in their mind, Curtis Samuel.
I agree with that. And they also still, by the way, have a major investment in Curtis Samuel. $8 million a year they signed him to last year. I'm going to go and look at his numbers right now about and again, and I wouldn't I'm not going to sit here and think they move on from him, I guess. So it wouldn't matter. It doesn't matter. But I do have an investment in him where he's going to be on the team, I think. It's just more about where he plays, what role he fits in. Would you give any credence to maybe a guy like Tyrell Shavers winning that 5th job, or the 7th round pick Caden Prather to win? Because I think those are, I guess you would still have KJ Hamler. You'd still have Jalen Virgil. I just think those guys are guys that probably are really on the outside looking in, even more so now.
It depends how much they need that person to play special teams.
Mhm.
If the way that they build their roster is that if you're keeping 5 receivers, you need somebody to play special teams. But I don't think that's going to be the case. I think that the 5th receiver on this team should still be somebody that can help the offense. And if you keep 6 receivers, then that 6th guy is probably more of your special teams specialist who is just break glass of emergency in case you need him on offense.
Mhm.
So I don't think that we'll see those guys. Like I would say right now, I think that it's probably a long shot for Tyrell Shavers. But don't count out a young guy who's been in the system. Every once in a while, those players hit for the Bills.
It's always game day in Buffalo. Thanks for downloading, subscribing, throwing us a like, a review, anything else. We are on iTunes, on Spotify. If you're listening, the Odyssey app, and of course, if you're watching, we have some great numbers over the draft weekend. We've had some great numbers. We appreciate that. Everybody who's come new to the YouTube page at Sal Sports on YouTube, over 12,000 subscribers. We're growing it, so we really appreciate that here on It's Always Game Day in Buffalo. All right, so Elijah Moore added to the wide receiver room. How about just aesthetically what this looks like and what kind of skill sets they have now? Because the Bills now have a little more of what we talked about they needed, separation. They also have a little more speed, adding Elijah Moore, obviously, right? And this is something that they really haven't had with Josh Allen in a couple of years at quarterback, which is somebody to go down the field, stretch the field, and throw the ball deep. They've had some opportunities to throw the ball deep the last couple of years, but honestly, I mean, Stephon Diggs wasn't slow, but he's not considered a burner. Didn't hook up with Josh Allen a couple of times that they were kind of in that position a couple of years ago. And then Mac Hollins had a couple last year also that didn't work out. The ability to throw the ball over the top of the defense is something that has been missing. Mm-hmm. And I think with Elijah Moore, obviously it could be there. But I would also say with Joshua Palmer, even though he's not a burner, we've seen he can get down the field.
Yeah, and also can separate too. So those are kind of the 2 guys on the team who I think you're counting on separating, just because that's not been something that Keon Coleman can consistently do, at least at this point in his career. And what Shakir brings you, just yard after the catch, just menace what he is. They've been searching for speed, though. So it shouldn't be a shock that this is what they're trying to do. They've taken flyers on guys in the last several seasons in hoping that they can unlock some sort of speed that the Bills haven't had. Mm-hmm. Deontay Hardy a couple of years ago. It was KJ Hamler last year. That never necessarily worked out. I think Andy Isabella was a pretty quick guy when he was coming out of college, and then, didn't necessarily work out in Buffalo. So it doesn't shock me that they're trying to kind of go back into this, hey, let's go get somebody who can bring us some speed and some verticality. But I think this guy has verticality. Is that a word?
I don't know.
Let's look it up. I think
verticality.
I'm
curious.
Word, right?
Let me know verticality is a word, because I don't think I've ever heard that word until you just mentioned it on this podcast.
Verticality refers to the state or quality of being vertical, meaning at right angles to the horizontal plane or upright. Yeah, verticality is a word.
We can use verticality.
Hey,
you got it.
Let's go. I don't think I used it the right way, but it just sounded fun to say.
Sounds pretty cool. Sounds like you're smart. All right. So let's take a look at the roster real quick. I want to do that because the Bills are up to 89. Brandon Beane said to us that 89 players. He said they probably wouldn't get to 90 until after rookie minicamp. So we thought maybe 88 or 89 because maybe you leave one door open, one spot open. Remember last year, that's where they signed Joe Andreessen after rookie minicamp. Yeah. So it's totally logical. It could happen. Wouldn't count on it necessarily, but you never know. You like a guy rookie minicamp, you sign him, you get to 90. This is the Bills. Have it on your screen right now on the video side. The Bills 89-man roster. What it looks like they're going to have here as they run into rookie minicamp, which includes the rookies that were drafted and the UDFA signings. On this particular graph, we've known about some of these positions for a while. No real changes. Wide receiver, obviously, but corner's the other one. Matt, they got a lot of corners on this roster, and not everybody's going to be able to make this team. Not everybody's going to be able to play. That said, I mean, maybe Dorian Strong doesn't make the team, but boy, it's tough to move on from a 6th-round pick. Jordan Hancock kind of has to make the team, I think, based on where he was drafted. And look at those other names. Obviously, Max Harrison's on the team. So is Taron Johnson, Christian Benford. Now you have Tre'Davious White. You have Dane Jackson. You have Jamarcus Ingram. You might have those 3 guys fighting for 1 or 2 spots.
Yeah, Trey White, I think, is going to be on the team. I just, based off of what he has meant to the organization, I very much think that it would be a Dane Jackson, Jamarcus Ingram conversation. I do not know which way you would lean, whether you think that you want the upside of Jamarcus Ingram or if you want the reliability as a depth guy of Dane Jackson. But obviously, that is a position now that there's a lot of names. There's a lot of depth. It was funny. My original plan today before they signed Elijah Moore was to talk about all of the corners that they had just added within the last couple of weeks because it came quick. All of like 2 weeks ago, maybe today, it was, the Bills were bringing back Tre'Davious White. Then it was the draft, and then it was, okay, you do Elijah, you do Max Harrison, and you do Dorian Strong, and you do Hancock, like boom, boom, boom. So all of a sudden, a room that looked pretty bare adds 4 names to it that now you're assuming are going to be into the room. So it has changed the dynamic of how they're going to put together the 53-man roster. I like the cornerback room now. The one thing I was trying to figure out, because I had to make a graphic today at work, if you had to do a depth chart for the Bills cornerbacks, would you put Trey too?
Okay, so that is kind of my depth chart. Let me bring it back up on the screen here. Hold on, let me do that. This is a loose depth chart for me and what I've done. I think to answer your question, no, I did not. I put Max Harrison number 2, but I think it's a good debate. I do have Tre'Davious behind him, but that's only because I say, okay, he's a first-round pick. Yeah. I think right now, without knowing if Max Harrison can win the job, but he'll get every opportunity to, I think it's fair to say Christian Benford, Tre'Davious White, 1, 2 as your outside corners. Obviously, Taron Johnson, nickel. But I have Max Harrison there only because he's a first-round pick, and I think he'll get every opportunity to win the job.
Let me sway off of something here. This is a really interesting. Do you have anything else specifically with the roster that you're showing that you want to talk about? Because I have a question for you based off of what we just talked about.
No, I think I'm good right there. Go ahead.
Okay. Not being Max Harrison, so take him out of the mix.
Mm-hmm.
Which rookie do you think will get the most snaps next season? A really interesting question because there's a lot of ways you can go with it.
I would say Landon Jackson as I sit here right now.
Okay. Interesting. I want to know what TJ Sanders is, obviously, because that's I'm also thinking like Jackson Hawes too. Like he might be on the field a lot.
He might be, but I mean, how much was Alec Anderson on the field as a 6th offensive lineman? It wasn't that much.
I think it was 16% of their offensive plays.
Yeah, that's not a lot, though.
No, that's not a lot, but I think you would use this probably more than you use that, right? If it's
probably, but you could also still use him as your extra offensive lineman, or you can go with Jackson Hawes. You're right. I think Dalton Kincaid's injury played into that a little bit as well, by the way, last year, and you'll hope that he stays healthy.
That's a good point.
I think Landon Jackson, here's why. I think it's totally fair to think one of the DTs, TJ Sanders, Deion Walker, most likely TJ Sanders. But because they have Sanders, Walker, and Ogunjobi all new, and Ogunjobi, of course, suspended, I think that really kind of takes a little bit, away from the other guys to be able to play because it's 3 new guys. Mm-hmm. I know you have Bosa, Hoyt, and Jackson, but I think at defensive end, it feels like in pass rush situations, you're up in games. You probably have more of an ability to try and put guys like that on the field.
Yeah, I agree. Another name to really watch out for this upcoming season is Javon Solomon, right?
I'll agree. I've been saying it. You're right.
You put those depth charts up, and Javon Solomon is pretty low on the depth chart, understandably so, given what they used to get him compared to players like Landon Jackson and the other guys. So like Landon Jackson's going to be on the team, but how do you use Javon Solomon? I mean, he's a player that showed some juice last year. I liked what I saw from Javon Solomon as a later round rookie last year.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. It's funny. I keep looking at the depth chart. I keep forgetting. I'm not forgetting it, but it kind of to me goes, oh yeah, Joey Bosa's on the team. Like he could be good. Like he'd be really good. Obviously, we know the health issues and the injuries and the concerns. But Joey Bosa has been a really good player in this league.
How would you use him off the bat? Would you use him just on like third downs, like on obvious pass rushing situations?
I think if he's perfectly healthy, he's your starting defensive end, but you just kind of manage it throughout a game. I don't think you just use him as a specialty guy.
I don't know. It's tricky. Like it's funny when they signed Joey Bosa, all the comments were essentially just put him in bubble wrap until you get to the playoffs and then let him go do what he needs to do to make sure that he's healthy and ready to go for that. I could see Joey Bosa having a surprisingly low snap count all the way up until they're in like crunch time.
Sure.
Maybe must-win
Yep.
games, or eventually if they can get to the playoffs again. I think that's maybe proof to your argument that Landon Jackson could really see a pretty high snap count.
Yeah. I think that's also part of it. Go ahead.
Look at all of a sudden the size that they possess on the defensive line that they did not have last year. I mean, you have a situation where you could put Greg Rousseau and Landon Jackson and Deion Walker, and then I don't care whoever else on defensive tackle. Like, that is some serious height in size.
And the length. Yeah.
That's what I mean. Like that height, you're talking about what, 6'7", 6'7", 6'6". Like, those are not small guys trying to get after somebody.
All right, so just a little bit of house cleaning here. Rookie minicamp will be next weekend, not this weekend. We'll be out there to kind of talk to the rookies to see them perform a little bit. But the Bills will hold a rookie minicamp. Teams are allowed to hold it either this weekend or next weekend. The Bills are choosing next weekend to do that. And then we have schedule release the week after that, which is going to be Wednesday night, May 14th. I'm sure Matt and I are going to be getting together in some way, shape, or form, probably that night, to break down the schedule. There have been, if you've probably seen it, everybody, you have seen some internet rumors saying the Bills are going to play on Christmas night at home. I don't think it's far-fetched. I think it very well could happen. I've maintained, as well as you have, I believe, they're playing on one of these holidays, one of these special dates.
Yeah. I mean, we've tried to we're not reporting anything because I don't think we know. Neither of us knows yet, but we have hinted and kind of told, a lot of our friends and family, like, hey, it seems like there's a real chance that the Bills could play on Christmas. So I'm kind of going to operate under that assumption until it's either proven to be wrong or the schedule comes out and you go down and you go, oh, week 17, not Christmas. So yeah, I don't think that it's far-fetched. Mike North certainly left the door open for the Bills to be playing in a window like that. So I could see that happening.
Okay, before we get to your questions, we did ask for some questions. Holy cow, I asked a half hour ago. We got over 50 questions submitted. So we got a lot here. And I will tell you, most of them are dealing with a lot of things we already talked about. The depth chart at wide receiver, Elijah Moore, his production, his role. So I hope we answered a lot of those questions for you. Before we do that, we're in the process of trying to do some audience research on this podcast. We've had Odyssey, our corporate, people reach out to us and say, hey, we'd like to talk to some of your regular listeners. We've actually contacted a couple regular listeners on our own already. A couple have done it, a couple have not done it. But either way, if you are comfortable with talking to someone from Odyssey who would contact you online, DM, Twitter, something like that, email, they just want to get some feedback on what you like or don't like about this, right? About this podcast. I guess that's the best way to put it. So if that's the case, put a comment in the YouTube section and say, hey, I'll talk to somebody, have them contact me. Here's my email, or DM me. Here's my Twitter handle, something like that. We just like to get people who've been with us for a while, people who are regular listeners of the podcast, just so we can make this show as good as we can make it for you by taking all of that feedback and rolling it all into one, basically.
Yeah, getting the feedback from everybody who watches and listens. And of course, we very greatly appreciate that. But I think they're going to try and figure out, what do some of the other podcasts kind of under our umbrella do that people like? And maybe what are some of the things that we do that maybe they could implement into other shows? Or how could we just make the show a better experience for anybody who is watching and who is listening? So if you leave a comment, I spend too much time in the comments. So if you say nice things, I usually see it. If you say mean things, which happens a lot, I also usually see it. So if you leave a comment and say, hey, I'm cool to get DM'd, we would very much appreciate it. So thank you in advance for whoever ends up deciding it's cool.
Yeah, thank you so much. We really appreciate that. All right, let's get to some questions at Sal Sports, at Matt_Bove. Our first one comes to a guy named Donald, who actually is now a subscriber to me, and I appreciate that. We have a Discord channel with my subscribers, Matt, which is really cool. I added an NFL schedule discussion to the Discord channel for all my subscribers, so that's pretty cool, and we got something going on there, so I really like that. And Donald came aboard, and you could subscribe too. Just hit the pink button on my Twitter profile. You get some exclusive content. Donald says, do you think this makes up for the Cooper and Hollins losses? All right, I think you kind of alluded to this earlier, and the question was basically take the two that are out, Cooper and Hollins, and take the two that are in, Palmer and Moore. I think that's fair, the way to do that, right? I think that is. Here's the way I look at it. Hollins was very important for the Buffalo Bills. He played multiple roles. He led the team in receiving touchdowns. Cooper just did not have the production I think the team wanted, but I do think he served a purpose and he served a role. I think these two guys offer you more of what you needed in the wide receiver room, specifically with traits and skill sets that they did not have.
Yeah, and I don't want to keep going back to the same thing, but we can both tell you from conversations we have had with people at One Bills Drive, the goal is to get the roster relatively young again. I think they want to get younger, they want to get faster, they want to get fresher. They want to kind of like not reset things, but kind of like begin a second wave of this second half of Josh Allen's career's push. So you substituted out two guys who are in the end of their career or in the second half of their career, to say the least, for two guys who still have, I think, a lot of potential and a lot of upside. So, yeah, no, I think that this is, you definitely would still want to have a player like Matt Collins on your roster just because of all the different things he can do and the locker room presence that he was. But I think the upside of both of these guys is far greater than it was for Matt Collins.
Matt, this is a question just for you because I know you're totally dialed into this. Joey Katz asks us, who do you see coming out of the East, the Cavs or the Celtics?
Oh, you know what? It's funny. I like basketball. I watch a lot of basketball these days.
I love that.
I am a hockey guy,
Yeah.
but I find myself watching a lot of NBA playoffs.
They're amazing. NBA and NHL playoffs have both been amazing so far.
Yeah, I mean, both teams just an absolute juggernaut. I'll say right now the Celtics, probably because I would be rooting for the Cavs. So, right, you root with your brain, not your heart. I would like to see the Cavs go, but I would guess right now Boston OKC. I mean, like, that's not a crazy prediction. That's probably the betting favorite prediction here. But I hope it's...
I'm going the other way.
Oh, really?
I'm going Cavs. I think they're just... Dude, they're amazing to watch.
Oh, they're awesome.
I mean, so are the Celtics, obviously, and they're tried, right? I mean, the Celtics have been down this road. They have guys that have played, in these situations in the playoffs, and man, but the Cavs are just they're just so good everywhere. There's no holes. And again, I don't want to say like the Celtics are, but holy cow, they just steamroll teams. It's crazy.
Give me my ideal matchup would have probably been or would be Minnesota, Cleveland. Oh, that would be so fun, but it'll probably end up being, Golden State, Boston or something.
On that note, who do you like to come out of the East and the West in hockey?
That's a good question. I don't feel super strongly in either direction. I don't know if there's a team that has been incredibly impressive in the NHL playoffs where I'm like, ooh, that team is definitely going to go. I know Carolina has advanced, but I'm still think there's some flaws in their game. My guess is Florida in the East. In the West, Vegas. It's like, it's so boring. It would be. Is that a rematch of last year? Florida,
no,
Vegas.
It was Edmonton, Florida last year.
Yeah,
Edmonton was down 3-0. They came back to tie it and they lost. I could see a rematch this year, although Edmonton does not look as strong. They're now back up 3-2 in their series. I'm rooting for Edmonton. I'd like to see that happen. I think McDavid, it'd be great to see him win one, obviously. So
yeah,
that'd be really cool. So I think I'm gonna go Florida as well. Again, I'll go back to what I said about the Celtics though, which is like it's hard to go against them because they've been there, they've done that, with this group. So
yeah,
that'll be interesting. All right. We have another question here. Oh, let me grab it. I just had it on my screen a minute ago. All right. This is really good question from Mark. This is a operational question that I can help answer. Do the two suspended players count on the initial 53, presuming they make the team, or they go right to suspended and don't risk 54 and 55 to waivers? The answer is on cut down day, Michael Hoyt and Larry Ogunjobi do not have to make the 53. They'll automatically just put on a suspended list. In fact, it's actually right at the 53. I don't want to convolute this about dates and timelines, but basically they don't have to make the 53. The Bills essentially get 55 players, Matt. That's what happens. They essentially get 55 players. Let's remember, there's also a rule now that says you don't have to have like the Reed Ferguson parking lot cut up to 2 players. You do if you have more than 2 guys, but on cut down day, this started last year. On cut down day, you can transition 2 guys to IR and still have them come back without them having to make the 53.
It gives the Bills essentially 6 weeks to figure out the defensive line and what they want to do, right? Like it basically gives the Bills a little bit more wiggle room for something that I would imagine was going to be a pretty tricky thing to see play out. So yeah, I mean, you did a good job explaining it. That has been a popular question. I posted all of the defensive line, kind of how it stacks up a couple days ago. And that was a question that a lot of people asked. So no, those players do not count until they're brought back to the 53-man roster.
Okay, this is a question that's been being asked because of the situation with Elijah Moore and the unrestricted free agent tender tag. Okay, Kenny says, what does this mean for the Bills? Does it simply count against their compensatory pick next year? or is it just nothing because of, the math? Well, yes, timeline was it does count against the Bills because he had this specific tender on him. He does count against their formula as an ad. It doesn't matter though. The Bills were already not going to get anything next year because they had more ads than losses when it came to free agents and qualifying free agents. So this kind of doesn't matter for the Bills purposes. It might matter for the Browns. He does count on their formula, but they were already too heavy on one side to actually matter, if that makes sense.
I think right now the Bills have 7 draft picks next
They do.
season. I think it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 2 7s.
That's correct.
That sounds right. So
Yes.
it'll be a pretty, unless they move a player in the off. I mean, they could move a player in the summer for a future pick. We see that happen pretty frequently. So maybe that's something that they do, but it'll be a relatively status quo. But yeah, no, they shouldn't. This isn't hurting the comp formula just because they weren't going to get it anyway.
Just going to see what else we have here. I mean, a lot of people talking about the interview from Brandon Beane on Monday. A lot of people talking about the Elijah Moore signing. Should we have drafted? Here's going from Tax. Should we, the Bills, have drafted a 4th round wide receiver instead of Deion Walker since we knew Elijah Moore was an option? And I guess what he's trying to say is, hey, if you draft a 4th round receiver, maybe you don't sign Elijah Moore, and then you have this rookie wide receiver you like who's kind of regarded pretty highly. But I think I like what you said earlier to answer him, which is if you knew Moore was an option, you got him in your back pocket. Why draft a receiver in the 4th round?
Yeah. So, I mean, I talked about it on the last podcast too. And obviously the wide receiver position has been something that a lot of people have talked about since Monday morning specifically. So I like the upside of taking a flyer on a younger player. That was something that I had said a couple times in the last podcast, but I like the Elijah Moore move. So I think you can make the argument either way. To me, I feel like this satisfies kind of the needs of both, right? You get a little bit of the best of both worlds where you get a young wide receiver who's still relatively affordable. I know up to $5 million. We got to see the final details, but it's not like this is some huge contract. And then you also get Deion Walker, who Brandon Beane said he had a 1st round grade on a year ago. So this is clearly a player that they valued. And yeah, I just think that the board, in Beane's words, fell the way that it fell. And then this is how it ended up playing out. So it is, the timing though is hysterical that, he was on GR Monday morning. The Elijah Moore report was minutes later.
Yeah. And listen, I said this I went on before we recorded this podcast tonight. We're doing this on Wednesday night. After Elijah Moore signed or agreed to terms, the report came out. I went on WGR at 6 p.m. I talked about this with Chopin Bulldog, and I'll explain it again here. Somebody actually did ask us in the questions if the interview on Monday, if we thought had any impact on Brandon Beane signing Elijah Moore. My answer is no. Look at the timing. Look at the timeline. Brandon Beane went on WGR on Monday morning. The Elijah Moore thing was already moving because as soon as he hung up the phone, there was already a report from someone else nationally, Jordan Schultz, I believe, who said, Elijah Moore's visiting the Bills, who had nothing to do. It didn't even know probably Brandon Beane had been on the radio with Buffalo.
Yeah, and the other thing too is like you can't book a flight in 13 seconds to get somebody to Buffalo. So I'm gonna find the timestamp of the original Jordan Schultz tweet because it was more of just like a timing from a funny standpoint.
It was literally that he got off the interview.
9
I was watching and listening, and then they come back and Joe DiBiase, Sneaky Joe, has the update and says it. That's how I learned about it.
9 a.m. So Brandon went on GR at 8:30. 8:30. So he was probably done at around 8:50, and 10 minutes later, the Elijah Moore stuff happens. I don't think Brandon finished with Jeremy and Joe, called Elijah Moore's agent and was like, he's on a 12 a.m. or he's on a 12 p.m. flight to Buffalo. So yeah, I'm sure that the wheels were in motion a little bit before that. He could have leaked the news on the radio. Like he could have said, like, "Hey, we got something cooking you don't know about."
That would have been pretty funny. All right, speaking of something cooking, real quick before we let you go, a few days ago, the Bills and the NFL and Nike announced what they call a rivalries program. What's going to happen here is Nike and the NFL have a new and exciting, I'm reading the press release verbatim so everybody knows, a new and exciting uniform and fan gear program that will give athletes and fans an opportunity to connect like never before. The program will elevate NFL rivalry games over the next 4 seasons with specially designed Nike uniforms and fan gear. Rivalries will drive fan engagement by celebrating storied traditions and uniting communities with unique and elevated product design. The Buffalo Bills are one of 8 teams selected to be a part of rivalries for the 2025 NFL season. The first wave of participating teams hail from the AFC East: Bills, Dolphins, Jets, Patriots, and the NFC West: Cardinals, Rams, Seahawks, 49ers. So what this means is, the way I read it, Matt, this is like a city connect that baseball does, that the Bills are going to have a uniform in some capacity that reflects the city of Buffalo or whatever, Western New York, against either the Dolphins, the Patriots, or the Jets in a game.
Yeah. I mean, doesn't it seem kind of obvious that it could be a red Bills helmet against whatever the opponent they play is? Maybe it's the Patriots and they wear well, no, they wouldn't wear a red helmet also. Have the like a teal
I'm thinking
helmet?
more like a jersey, though. I don't think this is the red helmet. I think this is a jersey that reflects something about Buffalo.
Couldn't it be both?
Yes, it could.
Couldn't it be both? That's
But
kind of what I'm thinking.
it certainly could, but I think that it's more about the way I read it. Do you ever see the City Connect jerseys for baseball? You've seen those,
Yeah,
right?
no, those are sick. Yeah. Well, I mean, like the Red Sox wore the yellow Boston Marathon jerseys, right?
Yes, correct. Specially designed Nike uniforms and fan gear. So yeah, I think it's head to toe, I guess. Head to toe.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, what would be a Buffalo themed uniform?
Oh,
I
come
don't
on, right? We know that's going to have something to do with a chicken wing on it or Niagara Falls, both. I don't know. It's got to be, right?
Zuba's armbands.
know.
Zuba's pants. What if they wore like just a traditional white jersey with Zuba's pants?
Okay, this is what we need now. Here we go, everybody, right? You're listening
Yeah.
to this. We already asked you. Drop a comment in the YouTube section about if you are interested in being part of the research from Odyssey and helping out here. Also, give us a design. Give us a design for this Nike uniform for the Bills. I'm afraid to say that. I have no idea what's going to happen here now.
No, I hope we find out, right? Can we please, maybe this will be how Josh walks out of the tunnel at the open practice that they have in early August, where every year he wears a crazy helmet. Maybe this year he'll actually have something to unveil. Who knows?
All right. Thanks a lot for joining us here tonight on It's Always Game Day in Buffalo. And today, whenever you're listening, we really appreciate it. The Bills, they're going to be signing Elijah Moore. They will get to 89 players on the roster. They'll have rookie minicamp May 9th. The media will be out there. We'll talk to the rookies for the first time in person. And then, of course, it's OTA time right after that. Schedule release on May 14th. Matt, your voice is sounding better, by the way.
A little bit, but let me tell you, man. So thank you. I'm glad. Yeah. I don't know if you've noticed on the video side, I've yawned a couple times. It is a direct result of now, I think our daughter was patient 0. So she has been dealing with like an ear infection and a viral infection. Oh. So luckily she is on the mend. Let me tell you, getting amoxicillin into a 2-year-old is not an easy task. That is a battle. But she has not been sleeping at her normal rate, which has been waking us up. I think 2 nights ago I had 3 hours of sleep. I think last night I had like 4 hours of sleep. So hey, fingers crossed. Like, give me 6. Give me 6. I'm not asking for 8. Just 6 sounds so nice.
Well, I'm glad she's doing better. I'm glad you're doing better.
Thank you.
Yeah, you got it. Thanks a lot, everybody.